the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.
This is EDtech, episode 14, recorded Monday, March 18th, 2013. The Standard of Standards. Welcome to EDtech, the education-focused show by, for, and about technology managers, put on by the fine folks at AVNation. My name is Tom Albright. I'm your host. With us, as always, is Mr. Greg Brown from UCLA. How are you, sir?
Beautiful UCLA. 329 days of sunshine a year is not just a forecast, it's an outlook.
And is one of those days today.
Of course, yes. It's only in the 60s today, but it was in the 80s most of the last week. So, how's the weather out there out on the East Coast, guys?
That one of those East Coast guys would be Mr. Scott Tyner, who's in beautiful downtown. Where is Bates College?
It is in Lewiston, Maine. It's not downtown Lewiston, Maine, but it is in beautiful Maine.
Beautiful Lewiston.
Downtown
Maine.
Lewiston is where the stoplight is, right?
No, Lewiston's a fairly big city.
They have two stoplights.
No, there's like 60,000 people that live in the city.
Oh, wow. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And also the other East Coast gentleman would be Mr. Matt Silverman. He is from George Mason University. How are you, sir?
Doing well, thanks, Tim.
I'm from the Midwest. I'm in St. Louis, just outside of St. Louis, at a small little community college where I think we have 8,000 people here. So, we have one stoplight. This month, we're going to talk about a couple different things. First of all, there's a article on NPR asking whether or not classroom technology is worth the cost. I'm going to tell my president and anybody else from Lewis and Clark listening, yes, it is, because otherwise I don't have a job otherwise. Asking the question from Higher Tech Decisions, what makes a good proposal? And, of course, Bill Gates is chiming in on what makes a good classroom, or at least what's going to be in the classroom of the future. But first and foremost, guys, the summer conference season is upon us. One of the biggest ones that we all are going to is InfoComm. And if you haven't registered for InfoComm yet, please do so. Go to infocomshow.org. I don't have a code, but I'm sure if you're a technology manager, you can get one from one of the sponsors. But another one that's happening actually 2 or 3 days beforehand, June 10th through the 12th, is EDtech. And it's at ubtechconference.com. There are a number of different exhibitors at this show. If you are a technology manager and you're headed down to Orlando for InfoComm, if you can arrange it with your with the powers that be and go a couple days beforehand, you're going to see something at EDtech that you will not see at InfoComm. Mr. Brown, how can I make that assertion?
You're just trying to get Extron upset at me again, aren't
you? Okay, I'll get them upset at me.
Well, I think EDtech for the last 2 years has been their subtitle has been the show that Extron is hiding at because they don't go down the block to InfoComm anymore. And Extron will be there. And great, fine. I think that's great. Although if you're there and you're not busy Tuesday, I think people should come to the Technology Managers Symposium over at InfoComm, just personally.
Because you three gentlemen will be presenting there. All
that has nothing to do with it whatsoever.
It has everything to do with it. You guys are much more entertaining and informative than most of what you'll hear at EDtech.
That's what our 4 listeners say, at least.
Yes. Yes. My wife stopped listening a couple months ago. In all seriousness, Matt, is there EDtech is a fine conference, I'm sure. I've personally never been. I'm actually considering going this year on Monday, simply because, you know what, God love them, I still have respect for Extron, as much crap as we give them, as much trouble as I personally give them, and still asking the wonderful question, why aren't you at InfoComm again? Is this kind of one of those ways where guys like me who still respect guys at Extron can see them in action and presenting at a conference?
I mean, I guess you could. I just actually saw Extron at a local show that we do in Virginia. It's a Virginia, mostly state university technology show, and they had a booth and they did some presentation. I got a chance to catch up with my rep there, which I guess is their new strategy of doing the local shows. EDtech is an interesting one. Scott and I actually, I think, presented at its precursor, or whatever that was called, like EDUCOM or something like that.
Yep.
A couple of years back. I've always found the crowd to be less technical at the show than at InfoComm. It also a little bit more of a focus on the instructional side, but there's also a whole administrative side, the people who do LMSs and things like that also, and even some just some administrative systems at the show. It's interesting though, if you want to look at who actually goes big at this show, it's not Extron, but it's actually AMX. Mm-hmm. AMX is actually the sponsor of a couple of design awards, and I guess for their faithful, this is their show. So it's an interesting little show. I've just not really seen much value after. I think I've been there twice now.
Well, and Scott, a couple of the other sponsors are, you have Panasonic, who's a platinum sponsor along with Extron. You have MediaSite, which is a classroom capture software. CDWG, easy for me to say, and a couple others. And so you're going to see people here, like Matt said, kind of highlighted that you're not going to see at InfoComm.
Right, and I think that it's just like Matt said, that EDtech has tried to define itself. I think looking at the CIO level and maybe the level right below the CIO, it's not a real technical conference as much as it is practice and theory. And yet, I think that they need to do a little more work on exactly defining who their audience is. And I think if you look at their program, to me, it's still a little bit all over the place. But like Matt said, we did present at EDUCOM. I met lots of people down there that are I still communicate with in the AV technology managed world. But also at the time, it seemed to be much more tied into InfoComm. When you left EDUCOM, everybody got on a bus together and went over to the InfoComm hotels or whatever. You were there for both of them back then.
So it was almost kind of a nice symbiotic relationship.
It seemed to be more than it is now. Because where are they now? They're over at Disney this year or something,
mm-hmm.
aren't they?
Yeah.
And back then they were just a mile or so up the road in Orlando, and even that seemed distant. Well,
it was at one point officially affiliated with InfoComm, and I'm not sure what happened there, but that's lapsed. So
I understand.
Yeah, they were right next door at when we were in Anaheim there. What was that, 2007 or something like that?
Yeah, 07.
I actually got a free pass to EDtech, but there were things on the InfoComm side and classes there that I wanted to take those days, so I didn't really take them up on much. But yeah, it's definitely much more pedagogical and much more instructional oriented.
There you go, using big words.
I don't know if you saw this, Matt, but one of the years that, and I think it's the year we presented, and they did it every year for like 4 years, they had David Pogue as one of the speakers.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That was fabulous.
Well, I'll say I saw him there twice. The first time was great. The second time it was 80% recycled material, not so much.
Well, and the year that it was in Anaheim was the year that the guy with the get one laptop, the $100 laptop, was there.
Oh, you know what? I remember that. Yeah. I guess I did go in Anaheim.
And that was to me that was fascinating, to explaining his thinking, and it was pedagogical, but it was also it was somewhat evangelical, right? Where he was trying to be an evangelist for this idea of getting every child in the world, whether it was in a third world country or here, getting them a laptop and helping them, learn technology. So.
And Tim, it's pedagogical, not what you said.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Pedagogical. Pedagogical?
Although, for what is it, $895, they can afford the big name speakers, it seems. I would love to go and check it out, but I'm not going to get the money to pay for that entry fee.
No. Our buddy, Mr. Tim Schnabel, is presenting there from Extron. He's presenting challenges in designing a collaborative classroom as it relates to AV. So, if you would like to go see Mr. Schnabel, check it out at EDtech. So,
did we just plug Extron?
I have no comment for that. All right, moving on. University business. Aurora is developing or has released a. I don't know if we plugged Extron. Yeah, we plugged Extron.
Somebody make a note.
You know what? I still have respect for them, and for I don't agree with all their decisions, but I still have respect for them as a company. So,
well, I think we all do, but I think we all enjoy giving them a hard time.
Well, that we do too. All right. Moving on. Aurora has developed another HDBaseT wall plate. This is more about getting into a discussion about HDBaseT than it is anything, guys. But give them props for keep on developing this. Let me ask you guys this. Matt, we'll start with you on this. Is HDBaseT, have they won when it comes to HD video over Twisted Pair, or is AVB somewhere in the hunt? And are there other proprietary formats still in the hunt?
Well, I think they've won the short-term battle. I do think the long-term, and that may be 5-10 years or even longer down, is going to be AVB simply because it's a IEEE standard rather than HDBaseT, which is based off of Valorant's chipset. It had some interesting conversation actually with the Extron guys about this at the show I was just at, and there seems to now be some new industry fog going around where maybe you shouldn't get in bed with HDBaseT because you're dependent on one manufacturer's chipset, and what if they were to stop producing them, or what if something went wrong with their factory? And I don't know. I'm not sure if I buy that. But I really think at the price point and the functionality they provide, it's really the best place right now. And Aurora actually has had a couple of interesting offerings in this space. They actually have not quite a full DMPS, but a kind of a DMPS-like box, which is I want to say it's a 7-in scalered media switcher with a HDMI and an HDBaseT out, as well as I think 2x20 watt amp out for about $2,000 or maybe even less than that. So I think they've actually had some interesting products in this space. So
Scott, is Matt right when it comes to HDBaseT? Is AVB going to win out?
Matt is always right when it comes to this stuff. The truth is, when on one of our first shows we talked about HDBaseT, and I'm going to show both my ignorance and how much I learned in the show. I had no idea what it was at the time, and over the last few shows we've done, it seems to be cropping up more and more and more and more. So when Matt talks about it, because he's known about it from the start, I listen, and I would love some type of standard like this, whether it be HDBaseT or AVB, and I'm just going to follow Matt's lead. I'm going to do whatever he says.
Do whatever the Silverman says. Actually, little known fact, Matt wrote the spec for both AVB and HDBaseT. So.
Well, I think Matt has written all specs, hasn't he?
Ever.
He wrote those standards for Infocom too, I think.
He did.
All of the Infocom standards, I believe. At least that's what he was telling us.
While battling Chuck Norris.
I was waiting for that.
Sorry, I had to. A total geek thing. I saw a T-shirt the other day that said Chuck Norris was in all 6 Star Wars movies. He was the Force. All right, moving on. Greg is Mr. Silverman is always right. and I'll get to why I think he's actually wrong on this, but we'll move on. We'll get to you real quick. Do you think that HDBaseT has legs, or is it going to be AVB's war in the long run? It's going to be theirs to lose.
Whoa. Well, what, 10, 15 minutes into the show? I guess it's over. I guess my curmudgeon act is overdue now, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see us start the HDBaseT Plug Fest. I am skeptical of all of these things actually working interrelated with one another. And, if they don't, what the hell is the point of HDBaseT? So, I mean, that's my only reservation. I mean, it is a neat product. I've been real impressed with Aurora for a number of years. I don't have much of their stuff, but them and I think Kramer really both been doing a lot of really smart, innovative stuff the last couple of years. Watch out! We don't need to say who.
Well, I'm going to say who, because this is the reason why I think that Matt might be wrong, which I know is sacrilege. But here's the reason why, and you may end up being right in the very long term, right? Because my issue with AVB is the fact that it is over the network, and right now most colleges and honestly most Fortune 500 companies simply don't have the backbone, simply don't have the infrastructure to include that V part, right? That video part of AVB. Maybe that's where the long-term victory from them comes. But in the short term, you have guys like Crestron who, let's be frank here, DM is based on HDBaseT. So in the not too distant future, I mean, you already have, Panasonic has a built-in HDBaseT receiver, so you plug straight in from a transmitter straight into a projector, and you have video and audio, right? In the not too distant future, I could see where you come straight out of a DM chassis, whether it was a DMPS or an actual 8x8 or 64x64 or whatever crazy number it is, and plug straight into a Panasonic or another display. That right there, I think, is a huge step. And the fact that Crestron has based their, seemingly popular, I say seemingly because they've put in an awful lot of them, video over, HD video over twisted pair and over, fiber, based on this standard, based on this protocol, I think is going to take HDBaseT farther than AVB. So that's why I think that I'm more in an HDBaseT camp.
Tim, and I absolutely agree with you in the short term to the midterm. So I'll say the next 5 years. The challenge is HDBaseT does not support 4K. So you're going to have to look at another option if we end up going there. Now, both Crestron, Extron, and Kramer all have fiber options that do that, but that's not HDBaseT. Yeah. And again, I just think it's a long-term evolution. I absolutely agree HDBaseT is a short-term. It's what gets us comfortable with quasi-network style AV.
Okay.
But I think the evolution is, again, we need the bandwidth to get there first before AVB is even usable for video.
Yes.
I mean, I think what they're talking about is like 40 gig needs to do video over AVB, something like that. So we're still, 2 generations of networking equipment away from 40 gig network links to being even remotely cost affordable, even to an institution or a major corporation.
But when it gets there, you think that's what, and that's my thing is the backbone's just not there.
Oh no, I absolutely agree with you. But I'm taking more of the long term. I absolutely agree with you. Next 5 years, maybe the next 10 years, where HDBaseT is the way for us. And there may be an HDBaseT 1.1 or 1.2 or whatever, which deals with 4K. I actually expect they'll fix that sooner or later.
I wonder. I'm a little curmudgeon-y like Greg in saying what benefit? How does this benefit? Let's say company C to do this, because one of the things we've seen from a lot of companies is they like to go with proprietary equipment. And so it seems to me, for example, let's talk about people always do. Crestron really likes you to use their system. Extron, you can mix and match and use different pieces. It would seem to me like an HDBaseT solution would benefit a company like Extron more than it would Crestron.
Well, you got to remember Crestron
and yet
had
they've gone in completely different directions on that. And besides, remember who brought us the SKU-free cable.
But that all aside, this goes back to business. I mean, Crestron had a 2-year proprietary license or exclusive license on the Valorant chip, so that's why they were first to market.
Yeah,
right. But what I'm wondering, Matt, is does Crestron want it to be interoperable? Like it seems to me like they don't want it to be. They don't want a standard.
But they as much as they love selling us boxes, the display folks, the projector folks, look, Panasonic has one on market. Epson has one that they're going to be shipping by June. I think DP has one that they're also shipping now. So there's at least 3 projectors with a display port, and I think there's a couple of panels, from what I understand, in the queue. So all of a sudden, think about this from our cost perspective. You could buy maybe a slightly more expensive projector that you no longer need your room box or your receiver box or whoever's product you're using, and you go right from your 300 into your projector.
and let's get crazy here and say that Crestron is actually looking out for our best interest, whether ours is tech managers or end users, and saying, you know what, here's like Matt said, you don't have to buy our receiver box, right? Here's the thing. It's one less point of failure. So we go straight from whatever the transmitter is into a Panasonic or a Sharp or a Samsung flat panel. It goes straight into there. It makes our lives easier. It makes our jobs easier, and I think that's why I'm really bullish when it comes to HDBaseT.
I'd love it. I guess my other worry would be like kind of what Greg indicated and what Matt has said, in the sense that HDBaseT is not an IEEE standard. So you might have, this company does it just a tiny bit different, and so now you've got Crestron certified projectors or Extron certified projectors or Kramer certified projectors.
We kind of have that now, though, don't we? With the Crestron inside, on.
Yeah,
well,
right.
And just to speak to that, I mean, I've actually tried with a Crestron system the Panasonic HDBaseT projector, and it worked.
Okay.
Out of the box, we plugged the cables in, everything worked. I was, talking with the Extron guys. The thing they pointed out is, depending on whose HDBaseT solution you're using, there's actually like 3 different settings. So I think one for the AMX, one for the Extron, one for the Crestron. And you have to toggle it and say what flavor of HDBaseT do you want it to use to make sure it'll always work.
Okay.
Just in time for DB9's going away and everybody having their own control code, it's time for everybody's own version of HDBaseT.
Well, I think that largely goes to the control side of HDBaseT, because I don't believe there's actually a standard control protocol for HDBaseT, and that's what you need to flip that switch so it tells you how you're actually going to talk to the projector.
Very good. All right, you are listening to EdTech. That gentleman there is Mr. Matt Silverman from George Mason University. Scott Tyner is here from Bates College. He's also a blogger with Rave Publications. And last but not least, Greg Browner from Greg Browner. Good Lord.
I've been called worse.
I certainly hope so. Greg Brown from UCLA. This comes to us from CNET. The author's name is Steve Gutenberg. Those of you from the 80s can make whatever kind of jokes you'd like. Those of you who weren't can Google him.
I wonder what happened to him.
Well, that's what he is. He's a writer now for CNET. Do separate components sound better than AV receivers? And this he goes on to ask the question whether or not you're at your home stereo, whether or not you need a separate amplifier, a separate receiver, and a separate surround sound processor. And not that we are a home AV show although that's not a bad idea. I should call somebody about that. This led me directly to our conversation from last month when we started talking about the new DMPS line from Crestron. And if you're not familiar with what the DMPS line is, it's obviously it's a next generation of the MPS line, which came out, what was it, 6 years ago? 5 or 6 years ago.
A while ago. It was
And
good
it
stuff,
was,
though.
it was good stuff. It's all one box. It includes a video switcher. The MPS did, and then this is the new generation. The DMPS stands for digital media, obviously, but it's a video switcher. It's an audio switcher. It is a mixer as well. It's a matrix if you get a big enough one. The 100 only has one output, but the 200 and 300 have several different outputs.
And it makes coffee.
As long as you have a relay, to make your coffee. It's also a control processor. So it's all this stuff mixed into one. It's also a DM, digital media. We just talked about with HDBaseT.
The good DM, the single cable, as opposed to the spawn of the devil triple cable.
Triple cable, yeah. And that was their first generation. That was their first iteration. But yeah, it's the HG. The 8G is the single stuff, the single twisted pair. Or you can you could upgrade it, I guess, to a fiber. Oh no, you can't do that with the DMPS. No. Anyhow, so this is an all-in-one box. This is a single piece. Mr. Tyner, I know that you have some. I'm not sure how many. I've worked with a couple myself. Is this a good thing? Is this all-in-one box thing a good idea when it comes to classroom technology and when it comes to putting these into whether it be your lecture halls or your banquet facilities at places of higher education?
Yeah, it's funny. We had this conversation here at Bates literally just a day or two ago. We've got a ton of MPS devices. We've got a few DMPSs. They're very convenient. They're very easy to install. One of our concerns was, when you put everything in one box like that, you lose one thing, you lose everything. The counter to that is then have a spare one sitting there, and literally within minutes, you've got everything replaced. You don't have to, if you've got an audio problem and you think it's the box, you don't have to start deciding which 5 devices has got the problem, right? Just put a new box in and put that on your counter and figure it out. I think here's 2 downsides, I think, to kind of full components. Number one is there's obviously some limitations, right? The DMPS 300 for so long did not have echo cancellation, had really bad microphone mixing controls. They're putting one out now with echo cancellation, and I'm assuming that they're going to put some better mic mixing in there. But until they did that, you were limited to whatever they decided to put in the box, or whatever anybody that makes an all-in-one unit puts in a box. And so I think the other piece is, and this has been of interest to me more and more over the past few months, is about the quality. And that's what this article is about, right? It's about how does it sound? How does it look? And so I think that in your hang and bang classroom with 15 students, we don't think about that very much anymore. We just go throw something on the wall and put a computer image on it, make sure it fits. And so that's the other question I'm curious to think some more about is, do these all-in-one boxes have issues with video or audio quality?
Well, let me ask you another question. Do you? This is a little more pointed for me myself as well, because you just brought up something. Do you care, or do you spend as much energy designing and installing a 15-person classroom as much time as you do on a 100-person lecture hall?
No way.
See, I don't either. and I kind of feel bad now that you mentioned it. I'm like, well, no, I don't. But those 15 students are just as important as the biology lecture hall.
Well, and it's something I'm going to let these other guys talk in just a second, but it's something that
about time.
I've really been interested in. And I think some of the standards talk that we've done with the contrast and the brightness, I think some of the other standards that Matt has talked about with Infocom have really kind of made me think about this, is how often do we, even in our larger rooms, really pay attention to color matching, to audio balancing, to all that kind of stuff that is important. And I don't know that as a whole we really pay that much attention to it anymore.
Because it's not important. Because nobody pays attention to any of it. If it's basically in focus and bright, that's all that matters.
Matters to who, though?
And if it's intelligible, I mean, there are no standards for classrooms for the most part.
But here's the question, though. I mean, does it matter to you? Does it matter to
it
your
offends my
higher-ups?
delicate sensibilities on a daily basis.
Geez. Oh my!
Wow.
Any other questions? but it's something it's just one of the many things. It's one of the few things I've stopped beating my head against the wall about. But yeah, it largely doesn't matter in the vast majority of all of our general classrooms. As long as the projector turns on, is bright, and is in focus, and anything can be heard reasonably intelligently, they don't complain.
Well, and maybe this is something where I come from a different perspective on, since I did not start on the audio side or the live events side of the house. I started as an IT guy.
And
what was that, Craig?
And wrote all of the standards.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah. But what I kind of look at some of this stuff and say is, what is adequate for the application? And it's more of, rather than exceeding the needs, I look to meet the needs. And it's one of the things that I've looked at times as I've come into our industry, over the past, decade or so. It's sometimes I really wonder about over-engineering and people engineering to their tastes rather than the needs of the situation. Now, kind of jumping back to these all-in-one boxes, I like them with one thing. I'd love for the control to be pulled out of them because I've just had bad things happen there. But I do think they're good because they allow you to basically build architectures, and they let you build standards lines where you can do a lot with a single box, but that way you keep the number of parts in your inventory down and you provide a consistent experience throughout, many different rooms.
Exactly. I don't think you can understate that part either, Matt. I think that, the fact that you can have two MPS 200s or two DMPS 300s sitting on a bench, and that'll cover 20 rooms, as opposed to God knows how many amps and controls and switchers, and it's this box. And, you stick a USB and load a program, and boom, that room's back up and running.
Mm-hmm.
And even before that, I think that's the biggest point, which is again, in an enterprise environment, the standardization. Our last architecture was DM 8x8s and 16x16s. We literally have one, maybe two of each part sitting on the shelf as a spare to cover 80 plus classrooms. We're moving into our current architecture, which is the DMPS 300. And again, we'll have one, maybe two of each part sitting on the shelf to cover 80 classrooms, but we can keep them all up.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, as speaking as an owner of 30-some DMPS 300s.
Oh.
And yes.
Wow.
Well, I mean, I only have two of them installed so far.
I was going to say, are they all in your garage?
I wish, and for a special price.
They run Greg's fantasy football league.
Oh gosh, yeah,
So
the
UCLA discount there.
Income not being quite what it is in higher ed AV.
Yeah.
No, I think they're the 300 is fine. Yeah, there's some tweaky stuff as far as the audio end of stuff or things there go with the mics and the inputs that we had to navigate. But it's a good box. I would say though, if any manufacturers that were, well, if a manufacturer actually listened to this show, I would say the all-in-one boxes are fine, but you've got to put some damn impressive forethought into them before you start making them. I think the 300 is an exceptional piece of hardware and its brethren, but we could mention some other companies that like to make have liked to make multiple stuff in one box, where you sit there and you look at the spec sheet and it's like, well, why did you put those on, and why doesn't it have a couple of these inputs? What were you thinking? So that kind of really drove us away from one of the companies that we used to do a lot of business with. The match of their equipment was getting kind of funky for what we needed it to do. So it's a dangerous thing for the manufacturer, I guess, is my point.
And I guess my idea, my whole point of even bringing it up is sometimes I get nervous with the one.
Absolutely.
With the one, and you guys make some good points. Having backups and having things on the shelf in case something goes down is a really great idea.
Your system is set to a large extent.
Yeah. So, all right. Moving on from tech decisions, the question is this, and I'll pose it to you guys: what makes a good RFP, request for proposal? A couple of things. A proposal is something that, if you're not familiar with this, if you haven't been involved in this yet, when a department comes to you and says, hey, we're revamping our entire infrastructure, or we'd like to do with this with the classroom or that with the classroom. A number of years ago, we have a building on campus that was built in the 1840s. So putting technology in it is an interesting experience. Let's put it that way. Not only are you dealing with administration, but you're also dealing with historical societies and things of that nature. You have to keep everything in mind. And so we were approached by the departments that live in this 160, 170-year-old building. Said, hey, can we do something here? Can we upgrade? And so we set about meeting with them and talking to the customer, which in our lives, let's be honest, is the faculty and administration, and set about designing a system. And then we go about saying, okay, here's our design. Let's find out how much it's going to cost. Enter an RFP. Matt, we'll start with you on this one. You've got a written part of the RFP. You have drawings. If you're doing your due diligence, honestly, I personally believe that you need to have drawings, at least rudimentary versions, to give to integrators and people who are going to, who are going to bid on this, right? What exactly do you need to make a good RFP?
I think it all comes down to, I guess, having a good capture of your client's needs and your good needs analysis. We don't do many RFPs. We do more requests for quotations because we control our design in-house. But it's really coming down to something which I don't think is done well a lot of times in the AV industry, which is sitting down and understanding what the client needs, not necessarily what they want. And it's really the whole science of business analysis and really delving into requirements and things like that. So trying to put together a good RFP, you really need to document, their audio, their video, their control need, kind of actually that last conversation, the difference between what is the best audio solution or the best video solution and what the client actually expects to see. So you get a result which doesn't oversell or undersell, doesn't build in all this expandability for the sake of expandability. And really, you get a proposal back which matches what they were expecting.
And then that's fair. Greg, in addition to finding out what your client needs, is that the biggest aspect of getting a good RFP?
I don't know whether I can really add much to this. We don't really deal with them much in that we build our own systems for the most part. Some other campus departments I know prepare RFPs, but I don't think generally they're very good. I like the way the article references some of the standards in here, because I think that is an area where, we really need to see some more standards come out. Get working on those, Matt.
Yeah, Matt.
And in all of my spare time.
Yeah, your abundant spare time, right?
Yeah.
I can't really add anything to this one.
Mr. Tyner, let me put it to you a little different way. I don't here in Lewis and Clark, we don't farm out the installation, but I do. Obviously, I can't buy direct from Extron or AMX or Crestron, and so my RFPs look a little different than what a traditional would look like. I'm not looking for design or installation. I'm really looking for, I've met with the client, like Matt said, in our case, the client is faculty. So besides making sure that you've got exactly what you need from the faculty, what else would you need to get a good RFP?
Well, I think that I think that you need to look at it, even really drill down into what Matt said about talking to your customers, because so many of us don't do it, and I think that we talk to them about what they want, but what we don't want them to do is tell us what equipment they want. So if they want to tell us, I want to stand in front of the room and touch an LCD panel to control it. They don't necessarily need that, but they want that. What they don't do is say, I want a smart board up there, right? Because we're going to look into what the best technology and most reliable technology is, and it may not be a smart board, or it may be a smart board. And then I think it's about putting that down and communicating back and forth constantly. What I do when I work with faculty on a project is we'll sit down, we'll talk about what they need, and then we've got exactly what this article talked about, a narrative, a written document that goes back and forth between us that says, your room will be able to do this, and it will not be able to do this. We get a cost. If we need to adjust budget, then we change that narrative that you've added this function or you've taken away this function. And it actually often will even talk about what you can do in the future. So we might have a couple of cameras in a classroom. Well, we need to take one of those cameras out. Are we going to leave the wiring in place or not? So I think it's about all of those things. But having that narrative back and forth in a written document, I guess it may be an internal RFP.
And I like that whole constant communication going back and forth between you and the client, which is
and it's not just an email conversation. Like, it's a Google document that I share,
very good.
and we go back and forth on.
Okay, very good. I like that idea. I may have to steal that.
I'd be happy to send you a copy of one.
Very cool. Thank you. All right. Last but not least, from our fine folks at NPR, National Public Radio. Teaching 2.0, Mr. Tyner,
this is all what I love to talk about.
Is technology in the classroom? Is technology in the classroom worth the cost? Go.
Absolutely, and keep paying me, please. I think it is, and we had another one. I guess we're not going to talk about today. That was about Bill Gates' Classroom of the Future. I think what people miss here all the time is that technology is supposed to change things. So if we take again, I mentioned before, I'm on the school board of my local school. So if we take that $18 million budget that we have every year and we go, now we need $2 million in addition to that for technology. So now we got a $20 million budget. That doesn't sit right with a lot of people, and I don't think it should. So the technology should be doing something that improves the education, changes it, and at least keeps the cost the same, right? How many of us have seen these PowerPoints that are simply the titles of what somebody's going to say? What a waste of time. And yet when you look at this and you've got, and I know there were some negative things that people talked about in here about having Dave Barry talk, but to me, when you can bring a guy like Dave Barry in to talk to a group of writers, give me a break. How's that not worth it? If you can bring professors or experts in from all kinds of areas, how's that not? The one about watching them do a live autopsy. It's like, my God, that's awesome. So to me, there's just no question it's worth it. But the key is we need to change, and I don't mean a little bit. I mean a lot. We need to change the way we teach.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Mr. Silverman, Scott is very, very passionate about this, and I really do share his passion, because he's right. It is worth it, bringing people in from all over the world, literally, into your classroom. I mean, you guys could have in whoever, regardless of whether you're in Maine or you're in California or you're in the middle of Siberia. It doesn't matter. Is technology, to answer NPR's question, is technology in the classroom worth it?
Maybe. and I say that absolutely agreeing with everything Scott said. I think what I see often is a lot of, I'll say, over-engineering going into a classroom, which is why we even ask these questions to begin with. You know, the picture they have with that NPR article is a packaged Cisco telepresence system.
Mm-hmm.
And those aren't cheap. What that tells me is Cisco did a great job of selling. Whether or not that's actually what they needed in there, I don't know. I have no problem with technology in the classroom. In fact, it's what's kept me employed for many years. However, it's my concern is always when it's about putting the technology first and the learning second. And we need to remember that the technology always needs to be an enabler to the learning. It will never actually create any content or do more than what an instructor can do with it.
And that's valid. That's valid.
Can I jump in here? Just
Sure,
Greg, I don't mean to interrupt your chance here, Greg, but I've got to make just a couple comments. One is, Matt, I have to laugh so hard because you're right about the Cisco telepresence. But do you notice that they're using Skype to do it? And the article says that they're using Skype, which
that's awesome.
which is completely cracks me up. But
do you think that answers our question as far as whether they got the system they need?
Well, yeah.
No, Greg is 100% right on that. I mean, Matt is, and that's But the problem here is that, and this is a public school. They've got one of us serving 4 times what one of us serves.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got 3 or 4 of us serving it here. So they don't actually have the ability. They got sold a bill of goods without question, probably a great product, don't get me wrong, but because they don't have anybody who knows to say, no, actually, we could, put a webcam really in the room and do the same darn thing. But, here's just a perfect example. We installed the room I'm sitting in right now a couple years ago, and we spent $18,000 on it. It's a little Skype video conference room. $18,000 not a lot of money. We've done this year alone over 100 video conferences and Skypes in this room. Wow. And so people can look at this and go, "Oh, wow, $18,000." Well, we're saving these people travel at $500 a whack at a low amount. This thing's paid for itself 3 times over in 1 year. And I think that's what we always forget about technology is, it's so expensive. Okay, well, take everybody in your accounting office and send them back 20 years how they used to do it. And it's going to be a lot more expensive. Yeah. All right, go ahead, Greg. Sorry about that.
Well, and the reason
I don't have much to add. I think that's what we're going to find. I mean, wasn't there some sort of line for years about in the audio world where if bad sound were deadly, something about people committing mass murder or something like that, and I think we're going to see that as AV rolls out there more and more, is rolling out there. There are a lot of people doing AV that really don't know what they're doing, or they know what they're doing and they're doing like we've talked about integrators with so many of their systems not really being what the customer needs. So I think we're just going to see all of that, and it's going to be it's a call for further standards and further certifications and further shaking out of the industry.
Well, and it also goes back to one of our other stories about RFPs, and that's talking to your customer and seeing exactly what they need, right? And, whether that customer is literally, in our case, the customer is faculty and administration, or if you're an integrator, really listening to your customer, not just, hey, I get a spoof or I get a trip to Hawaii if I sell 1,000 Cisco systems.
Mm-hmm. Well, but this is where the AV industry is now, and I think this is part of why a lot of us are doing inside installs, Greg, with your articles, is if I'm a integrator and I come to Bates and I, hey, do this, classroom for me with a projector, a screen, and some speakers, he can't make any money on that.
No.
Yeah, he can't make any money. And so he's got to try to sell me more stuff. And what he's trying to do, actually, I think, by selling me more stuff is get his install to be longer and his programming costs to be more, because that's where he's going to make his money. He's not making money on selling me a projector.
And that's fair. Is that mainly because of the commoditization of things like projectors and screens. I mean, you're right, Scott, where, things like that doesn't cost a whole lot. The margins are like, what, 1%, 2% on stuff like that. So either you're going to pay for installation, which, let's be honest, you can put in a projector and a screen. You're a talented guy. You're capable. So why am I going to pay, $75, $100 an hour for your technician to come in here and do what I'm fully capable of doing?
And even if we do pay it, it's 1 day work for them. Yeah, so they're keeping somebody employed, but they're not making any money.
Yeah. That sounds like an interesting article for one of us needs to write. So
I'm going to write it.
Cool.
I call it.
Well, I guess the three of us will have to figure something else out to write about. Next month,
do a joint one.
Next month, we're going to talk about Scott's latest article, which is about streaming and something he did in conjunction with a president's alma mater, and that right there, folks, is what you call a tease. So you have to listen next month. He is Scott Tyner from Bates College and also from Rave Publications. How can people find you, sir?
I try to get on Twitter at @STyner, and I'm certainly on LinkedIn as well.
Very good. Thank you so much for stopping by and for sharing the hour with us. Also with us is Mr. Matthew Silverman, the author of All Standards Everywhere from George Mason University. How can people find you and your standards, kind sir?
You're going to get me in so much trouble.
I am. I might get myself in trouble, but go ahead.
You can find me on LinkedIn. That's pretty much the only place I'm active right now. And you can find Infocom standards at the Infocom website. We have 4 and more coming.
Yay! He has a new one coming out. When is it going to be available?
We hope to have the audiovisual system performance verification in public comment by the show this year. So that's our goal.
Very cool.
So
I'm waiting for Matt to come out with the standard on standards.
Oh, jeez.
You laugh, but such things exist.
Well, we at Bates we have a committee on committees.
As at George Mason, we have a policy on policies. So I completely understand.
All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to start a podcast on podcasts. All right. And Mr. Last but not least, go Bears. Are they in the Final Four? Or in the whatever? Are they?
Bears are like Montana.
I refuse to say Bruins at this point, Mr. Brown. Just so you know, in Orlando, I'm going to introduce you and say go Bears. I may either that or I'll get one of those little pennants that I had.
I'm going to bring you a UCLA Bruins shirt.
That is awesome. His name is Greg Brown. He is from UCLA. All joking aside, how can people find you, sir?
And I'm sure we have all of those policy and committee things too, but I remain blissfully unaware of all of them. Where am I? I am on LinkedIn, and I am also on the Infocom All Voices blog, where I've been causing all sorts of trouble of late.
Yeah, check out his part 1 and part 2 on integrators. So.
Although, to be fair, I had nothing to do with the picture of the guy taking the saw to the monitor.
Who was that, Grimes, that did that?
Yes, it was. Infocom staff sort of.
Mr. Yeah, the
tossing
staff.
me under the bus.
Yeah, it worked. It fit. You know what? It fit the article. So, all right. My name is Tim Albright. If you'd like to follow me, I'm on Twitter and other places. TD Tim David Albright. But more importantly, for everybody here at AVNation, please go by the website. They spent the fine folks that did the website have spent an awful lot of time and hard work on it. I was not one of them, so that's why it looks as well as it does. It is avnation.tv. avnation.tv. You'll find this show, our weekly, our other monthlies. We just started a control show, so check that out. We have a new live coming down in the next couple of weeks as well. So avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. This has been EdTech.